Hello and welcome to warrenthornton.com in conjunction with Unprecedented TV. Just to let you know, if you are watching on Rumble, Kick, you are watching on X, then of course you can come across and follow us at warrenthornton.com. The first hour of the show is free to air. After that, we have to go behind a paywall because some people get very upset about some of the subjects, some of the videos we show you and some of the subjects we talk about. But if you want to be part of the ever-growing family, come across, join up, and of course, have your say. I am joined, as always, on a Tuesday, Tweedy Tuesday, by James Tweedy of Sputnik. Hello, James. How are you?
Good, thanks, Warren. How are you?
I am very, very good. We have had, what can I say? A week is a long time, James, and so much has happened over the last 7 days that we need to talk about. We're going to get into some of the meatier stuff in a short while. The very first thing I do want to talk about tonight, because I think this is very, very, very relevant indeed, the real reason for the drone false flag. James, do you share the same opinion as me that the drones was a false flag, or do you think the dastardly Russians did it?
I think there's probably a couple of things going on there. One is that Russia was flying drones right along the Ukraine-Poland border, and that, they possibly the Polish, and they're doing that all the time. But this time, the Polish decided to shoot some down and say it was an incursion.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that the drones that were shot down were not. They didn't have warheads. They were decoys.
Yes.
And then that raises a whole series of questions as well.
It does. And of course, so let's get into some of this then. Because I have a theory here, and I don't know whether you would agree with it, but let's get into some of it. So the Polish people have been taking the mickey out of these quite a bit by turning around and saying, look, this is complete nonsense and all the rest of it, which I think is about right. But as I say, even the Polish people have been, should we say, taking the larrup on this issue. They've been saying that this is not true and this is all terrible and how, all the rest of it that's going on. So let's have a little look at this.
Kurwa szachy. A to kurwa Ukrainiec.
So the Poles have their sort of sense of humour on this. There is some crazy stuff.
2 days ago, they tried to target Polish homes. This is one of them in a village called Wyryki in eastern Poland.
So that turns out it was a Polish air defense, a Polish missile that malfunctioned from one of the jets, James Tweedy.
Yeah.
Did we have a massive overreaction from NATO and the West in terms of scrambling jets and firing missiles and all sorts of strange and wonderful things?
Well, I mean, it serves their purpose of saying that there is a threat from Russia, a certain political agenda, of saying that there's a threat from Russia, and therefore all the NATO countries have to increase their defense spending, maybe 2 or 3-fold, up to 5% of GDP, probably from 1% in a lot of the countries. And so there we go. So you've got that. It reminds me of the incident a couple of years ago where a missile landed on a farm in Poland and killed 2 people, right?
Yes.
And it killed 2 people, and then immediately the Ukrainian government, Volodymyr Zelensky, said it was a Russian cruise missile.
Yes.
With like a 1,000-pound warhead or something.
Yes.
That had hit Poland, and the Polish government called an emergency meeting in the middle of the night, and then it turned out it was a Ukrainian surface-to-air missile that they were using to try and shoot down Russian
It
missiles,
was.
and it had gone off course, and it had killed 2 Poles, right?
Yes.
And then, but for a moment, Volodymyr Zelensky said this is an attack on NATO, and NATO must respond. So he was trying to use it to
Yes.
to draw NATO into the war and get us all killed, basically, in the
Yes.
end, in the long run, right? Or not so long run if it had happened. So this is that, and it's also they've also reviving this idea of that again from a couple of years ago, that NATO should put all its fighter aircraft, all the NATO countries should put all their surface-to-air missile systems and their fighter planes in Poland, in eastern Poland, and use them to shoot down Russian missiles that are flying over Ukraine towards targets in Ukraine. So, or possibly flying over Belarus, which allows that to happen, you see. So, and then you might be talking about, it's like direct involvement in the war, and might be an act of war against Belarus, which is not a combatant in the war. All sorts of nonsense, all sorts of implications for that kind of thing. So I don't think they're going to do that, but they had a good time kind of shouting about it. This is the drone. It's called it looks like the Geran drone, or Geran, which means geranium, which is a long-range kamikaze drone.
No, that's a good. That's a Gabera. That's a Gabera. The Garand. Yeah.
So the Garand is a lot bigger. It's about twice as long and twice as not twice. It's about 2/3 long. It's about a third longer and a third wider. This is about 2 meters long and wide, and the Garand is about 3 meters long and wide.
Yeah.
But it mimics it's designed to mimic the radar cross section or whatever of the Garand, which is bigger.
Yes.
The Gerbera is, but the Gerbera is smaller and cheaper to make, and you just launch, I don't know, maybe one of those for every Geran, and the Ukrainian, and they fly at night, and the Ukrainian anti-aircraft guns and short-range surface-to-air missiles that they use to shoot them down have to shoot down the decoys as well as the real ones, because they don't know which is which. You see. And they do attack targets right over in the west of Ukraine, near the Polish border. That's true.
Yes.
But increasingly so now. At the start of the conflict, there were a few high-profile ones, but increasingly now. And probably the best route to take is kind of along the border. Go across Belarus and turn south and fly along the border if you want to get to somewhere close to Lvov.
Okay. So I have questions. Let's hear from Mark Breckle first. Mark.
Well, again, the Russians won't be that bothered about destroying a tractor and trailer in Poland. That was the main thing at the time. And the other thing is the panicking now, because Belarus are doing those maneuvers, and they're convinced now that Russia's going to go straight through, like I said, straight into Gomel and try and take Kiev. It's just all panic. They're panicking now over this.
It's either that or something else. And of course, the Americans are there and watching it. So I don't see where their problem is there, because the Americans are actually taking part. The Indians are taking part as well. While we're on that subject, I was going to get to that in a while, but while we're there, let's get to it. The Indians, of course, are taking part in these exercises, which has upset the Western powers. Something awful, James tweeted. The Indians have crossed the reddest of red lines, apparently.
Yeah, that's also nonsense. They are all members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is not an alliance, but
yes,
they do joint exercises between their armed forces. And the thing is, India and Western armed forces, Indian armed forces and Western armed forces also have joint exercises, and not so far. And India is not that far from Russia in places, right? Or certainly countries which are close to Russia.
Yes.
And then and so on. And then there are European military exercises every year all over Europe. Right, NATO exercises all over Europe every year, up in the Arctic and close to Russia in various places, in areas that border on Russia. And there isn't a lot of hysteria about that in Russia, but there's always.
So why is nobody getting upset then about all the ones that are going on in the European countries at the moment, right on the borders?
Well, there is some kind of criticism, but the Russians are generally pretty reserved about that,
Yeah.
In the past, it has created tensions, especially when they're very large, because suddenly there's a lot of extra forces and equipment, in those areas. It's one of the reasons for tension between North Korea and South Korea in the US, because South Korea and the US twice a year, certainly they used to run huge exercises right up by the border, much bigger than they need to be, and the Koreans would have to sort of mobilize people, army reservists, and they would have to be taken off the farms or out of the factories or something to do that, which is one rationalization that some writers in the West have made for North Korea getting the nuclear, getting the hydrogen bomb, because now they don't have to do that because no one's going to try anything with them. So, and so on. So everyone does it. The fact that there were US armed forces observers, military observers there watching it obviously as a goodwill gesture, as well as people from officers from lots of countries that were not involved.
Yes.
We're all there observing it, means that the US can monitor it and say and know that it's not, they're not.
Is that why the Russians and the Belarusians, or rather the Belarusians, let them go in there to do that? So that they can't get a false flag?
It's a goodwill gesture. It's like saying, well, you can't say. It's a clever thing, because they can say, well, the Americans can't say anything because they were there watching. They know it wasn't. They know what was going on. It was driving tanks around in the fields, and
which is going to annoy
twigs in their hats and stuff.
Which is going to annoy NATO. But let's get back to the drones for a minute. So I want somebody to explain a couple of things to me. These drones only have a limited 755 kilometer, I think it is, range. So we had, and there's been a couple of incidents. So we've had 755 kilometer range. Okay, they are decoy drones, which means that they want the Ukrainians to shoot at them. Why then would they fly them along the Belarusian border, then the Polish border, and then back into Ukraine?
Well, they would fly them over Belarus to out of range of Ukrainian anti-aircraft fire.
But don't they want them
to get to the
east? Hang on, James. Don't they want them to fire at these decoy drones?
No, because they're flying alongside the real ones that are going to the target. They would be mixed in among them.
Okay, I'm just thinking. But if we had the decoy drones, then right? So taking your premise there, and we had the real ones flying alongside them, how comes the real ones didn't fall into Poland?
I don't know. Maybe those photos are from somewhere in Ukraine. There was one that landed on top of a chicken coop or something. Yes. You see, there may be a,
duct tape.
I wouldn't necessarily put it past the Russian armed forces to let a couple of them go straight into Poland, just over the border, just to test what they, to see where all their radars and early warning radars and surface to air missile sites are, and all that sort of thing.
So let me push back on that.
There is another argument that possibly the Ukrainians or the Poles made a concerted effort to jam them with electronic warfare and make them go off course, as an engineer a kind of an incident like that. You see.
So no, what about the premise? Because you're just getting back to what you said there. Where you're saying that it might well be, you know, you wouldn't have put it past them. You wouldn't put it past the Ukrainians either to mock them up and cover them in duct tape and fly them and place them in various places, would you? Ukraine
Yeah,
and
they might.
Poland, maybe.
They have a large drone industry. They might actually be able to make one that looks like it. You know, they've probably shot quite a few of them down, and they can mimic. You know, they can recreate the design or something like that. They could you know, build something that
Together
looks
some
like
old one.
they may actually have taken a one that was shot down and put it on top of someone's chicken coop or something. You know, but you know, that one that was shot down in Ukraine. There's all sorts of possibilities. You know, I mean, whatever happened, it's being exploited for certain political purposes.
To the max, yeah. So that's my premise that I'm going to come at you with in a minute. Mark Breckle.
Well, again, it's all right for the Ukrainians to take a container load of drones and take them deep into Russia, and it's all right for the Ukrainians to take what I heard was a ship in the Baltic and fly them over near St. Petersburg. You can't have one rule for one country and another rule for a different country. It seems to be very biased, doesn't it?
You bloody well can, you dirty Rusky. How dare you? How dare you? And of course, Britain have taken getting lots of, shall we say, jets that are now going to go. And we've had Dutch jets in the air, and we've had the Romanian incident where the drones have gone out of Ukraine into Romanian airspace, then back into Ukrainian airspace. The Romanians didn't fire at it because they thought there was nothing to see here. I've got a thing here, James.
Yeah, they're not sending that many. You know what? They're not sending that many aircraft. I think France is sending 3 fighters.
Rafales, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think Germany is sending 2 or 3 Typhoons, whatever, similar kind of aircraft. So it's not that many planes. And the Polish Air Force is probably quite, you know, more than capable of dealing with it, let's say, because it's not, you know, it happened once and it's
au contraire
to happen again, basically. But
okay, let's get into this then, because the Polish are perfectly capable of patrolling their own skies. Their army could duff up the Germans right at this moment in time quite easily and quite capably. So, but my premise is, because we've also had this coming out. Now, just hear me out here, James, and tell me if I've got this completely wrong. We've had the Romanians turn around and say no to a no-fly zone. Now, my premise here, and I'm going to put this forward, is they have wanted for a long, long time, the NATO forces, to have a no-fly zone over Ukraine. If the Romanians have said no, obviously, to the no-fly zone, because they've got the biggest NATO airfield there anyway. So saying no to a no-fly zone over Romania is already there because they've got enough jets there. But we're having British and French jets suddenly turning up. This is pushing for an escalation, isn't it? Because they're going to start to edge into Ukrainian territory to try and make it a no-fly zone or cause an incident, aren't they, James? I mean, this whole thing... Is this possible that it was all cooked up just to try and advance the no-fly zone?
You can't just declare a no-fly zone. You have to do it. And they really don't have any hope of doing that realistically, right? And, you know, the number of drones and missiles that Russia can launch, you know, often in one night.
Yes.
Into Ukraine is in the hundreds, right? And then they're going from Russian airspace into Ukrainian airspace and hitting targets in the center or the east of the country.
Yes.
And
I'm trying to make it make sense, James.
You would have to fly. And Ukraine is a big country. Most of the NATO aircraft can't fly from Poland, bases in Poland, to anywhere which is really the front line. From Romania, it'd be a different story, but from Poland, so anywhere that's really on the front line and fight there, and then
Yes.
and then fly back without either landing or to refuel or refueling in the air. So it all
Yes.
becomes a lot more complicated. Then you're going to have
It does.
tankers orbiting at high altitude over the middle of Ukraine, where
Yes.
they could possibly be hit.
Yes.
The other thing is that Russian aircraft are not flying into Ukraine. Russian aircraft are not flying into Ukrainian airspace. Really,
No.
they're flying. You know, they're not crossing the front lines. They're dropping glide bombs from from 20,
Yes.
30
Distance.
miles out, right? So
Yeah.
then that's so what are you going to do? You're going to start flying planes over how much of Ukraine? How deep can you realistically go into
Yeah.
Ukraine? And to do what? To fire a $2 million air-to-air missile at a drone that
Yes.
costs $50,000 or $10,000 or whatever. You're going to do that.
It's not like they haven't done
Ukrainians
it.
don't do
Haven't
that.
done it with the air defense.
The Ukrainians don't do that with the Geran drones. They know that it's a waste of money. They use machine guns
Yes.
and automatic cannon to shoot them down because they can't afford to waste surface-to-air missiles on them.
Well, they haven't got any left, have they? Kiev got hit the other night, and they didn't fire one air defense missile.
Yeah, there's that as well. That's the whole thing. They have to save them for higher value targets, like a target that you can realistically shoot down, but is a higher value target, like a cruise missile, not a ballistic missile, because you can't. It takes too many of the air defense missiles to shoot it down, and not
Yes.
one of these little Geran drones because they're too cheap. It's not cost effective.
Yes.
So
I'm going to ask you a question then. Are we going to let Mark Breckle say what he wants to say? Then I'm going to ask you a question on the flesh-driven exoskeleton that is Stuve of Finland. Mark Breckle.
Well, again, there's drones going over Chernihiv right now. But the other thing is, how many Western planes have got past Liev and Odessa without coming out the sky?
There is that. It is one of those. So let's get into it with James then. James, given that Britain have now taken over, and I'll give you a rundown of exactly what's happened there, because Britain have taken over, of course, officially taken over.
Yeah. Okay. Go on.
You not think so? Okay. So we've had the transfer of control from Ukraine from Washington to London took place. And of course, don't get me wrong, the Americans are still giving the orders for the big stuff. Under the pretext of creating in Kiev the headquarters of the Multinational Forces of Ukraine, or the MNF/U, a commander has already been appointed. And of course, they're saying that 30 countries will take part in this MNFU, and its structure reflects the efforts of NATO and its allies. It's absolutely clear that as future confidence forces, this is a stillborn project. Russia has already worn its tongue out, repeating that no NATO contingents on the territory of Ukraine will be discussed under no pretext. And the West understands this perfectly well. Simply put, Europe is trying to play a long game. No, there is no one thinking about peace. And under the guise of creating a peacekeeping headquarters, the command of Ukrainian troops is being transferred under the British Crown. So they're talking about literally passing everything over to England, but they're not going to be allowed there, are they? I mean, this is a fool's errand, isn't it?
Okay, there was an announcement a couple of weeks ago. A lot of Ukrainian websites, which the kind of ones that were exposed as being a few months ago as being funded by US aid. A lot of them started going on about how a British general had been appointed to run this headquarters in Kiev.
Yes.
And actually they were referring, and I had to edit that story. And I'm like, And then I just, I was like, what's the source? Oh, it's this site. Well, what's that site? It's just one of those nonsense sites, right? And then I Googled it, like the reporter ought to have done. And it's a press release. It's from months ago. British government press release, and it says that they're going to have a 2-star general, which is not, I mean, okay, maybe they use that language in NATO, but you don't use it in Britain. You mean a major general who commands a division will be in the future appointed, and they were acting like this guy had already been appointed, but they didn't have a name. They don't have a name because they don't have a name for him, and there aren't that many major generals. I don't think there are that many serving major generals in the British Army, because no one's been appointed, right? And then there's going to be a 3-star general that the French are going to appoint, a lieutenant general or something, who's not going to be in Ukraine anyway. He's going to be in Paris or something, or Ramstein airfield. And but it hasn't been done yet, And anyone who says, and all this hysteria, you hear this from a lot of Russian commentators about how awful the British are and blah blah blah, and it's all their fault, and and calling us Anglo-Saxons and stuff. And we're not ashamed of our Anglo-Saxon history, but the last Anglo-Saxon king, Harold Godwinson in 1066, right? Anyway, moving on to the present, moving forward 1,000
I'm still waiting
years.
for my reparations, by the way.
Yes. Moving forward to 2014, it was Victoria Nuland. Is she she British? I wasn't aware of that.
No.
No. And was Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and Joe Biden, are they all British?
And the American ambassador of the time, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Biden claims he's Irish, but he's not really. So they're the ones who, it was their plan. Britain went along with it. The British government went along with it. A series of British governments went along with it, and that's a problem. And perhaps more enthusiastically than some, but not
Boris
really as enthusiastically as the Polish.
Yes.
And that here we are.
Okay.
But I don't think you can, for all these things, you can really exclusively blame it on Britain. I think what we can say is that Boris Johnson was on the inside track, and some other European leaders were not, about the real motives of the war for the war.
Yes.
And that's why he was chosen.
Yes.
Right. He was chosen to go to Kiev in 2022 and tell Zelensky not to sign the peace deal, or to tear it up after he signed it.
Let's ask Mark Breckle and Andy what they think. Mark Breckle and Andy. Then I'm going to give my statement, and then I'll let James carry on that. Mark Breckle.
Well, for a start off, if Boris Johnson had stayed at home, Russia would have still been in Kharkiv now. There was in Sumy. There was on the borders of Kiev. They were in Kherson. Ukraine was finished before Boris Johnson got on the train and started sticking his nose in.
Yeah,
so
there was a peace deal going to be done, wasn't there? Let's face it. And they said, no, stop and fight, and we'll give you all the weapons. And they lied to them.
Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah, it was a massive con.
You were stupid enough to believe the Americans and the British. Andy.
Sorry, Mike.
You got your mic open, buddy. Did you want to say something?
I muted it by mistake. Sorry.
Sorry? Andy's gone. Right, let's get into this then. So, who is to blame? The United States and the United Kingdom for destabilizing the place? Well, in the early years after the collapse of the USSR, the OSCE, the Council of Europe, proposed a security for all, if you remember, and the NATO expansion and how the agreements were forgotten. Many Western political circles continue to repeat the mantra of freedom of choices of alliances, yet no agreement prohibited former members of the Warsaw Pact from applying to NATO. But who would argue today that diplomacy is not just a piece of paper, but an atmosphere of trust? The US Secretary of State, James Baker's words that NATO would not move an inch eastward were not spoken lightly. At the time, they sounded like a promise. There certainly were a written agreement. Today, after 5 waves of expansion, when the alliance has literally surrounded all of Russia's borders, These words are remembered not as an old cliche, but as a symbol of broken trust. In the West, it was fashionable to dismiss Russia's warnings as paranoia. They were said to be internal fears that had no basis. Let's be honest, how would Britain feel if military bases, missile defence systems, and foreign instructors were deployed to Northern Ireland under the auspices of some hypothetical Eastern coalition, or a United States if we appeared in Mexico or Hawaii? In 2007, Vladimir Putin openly stated at the Munich conference that NATO expansion, unilateral actions by the United States, and a refusal to engage in equal dialogue were going to destroy the trust. And of course, in Europe, this was received with apprehension, in America with irritation, and London with the usual arrogance. The reaction was unanimous. Russia was baring its teeth, which meant it needed to be pressured further. But was that really the case? Who benefits from conflict in Europe and who benefits from the tension? Firstly, James, we've got the US military industrial complex. Every new country in NATO means new orders, new contracts, billions of dollars, support for Ukraine, rearming the armies of Eastern Europe, containing Russia. All this creates an ideal economy of constant tension. Secondly, control over logistics and energy. The less predictable the situation in Eurasia, the greater the dependence of many countries on America's infrastructure, currency, and advice. The countries on NATO's eastern flank are becoming not just buffers, but pressure points and channels of influence. Thirdly, ideological prestige. The West is reinforcing its worldview. We are defenders of democracy. We are civilization. We are progress. The opposition between authoritarian Russia and the liberal West has become a religion. And of course, religion doesn't tolerate doubt, does it, James?
Well, no. Okay. I don't think it's a religion. It's being, it's certainly being pushed through the media,
Yes.
in quite a shocking way, in that newspapers that used to be quite serious are printing absolute nonsense, propaganda nonsense that you can tell is nonsense just by reading it. And if they checked it, they would know it was nonsense. And so, yeah, you got that. So we've got a big problem there. We're being, the powers that be seem to have decided to push us into a war with Russia, some sort of confrontation with Russia. You may call it a new Cold War, because they don't particularly, probably the sensible ones probably don't particularly want it to actually, go to World War III. But it's all very unwise, and it's not in our interest, and it's actually making us poorer as citizens. We're poor, we're worse off. Citizens, residents of all these countries we're worse off because of the trade embargo on Russia, and because of the money that's being spent on fighting this war. And so, yeah, it's a huge problem. It's not a religion. It's just a victory for the proponents of certain kinds of politics. I think what Russia is hoping that if they win a victory which is sufficiently humiliating for the West, then that will be reversed. The more sensible people will win out again. You see, the people who think coexist with Russia and China and other countries will win out. That maybe already happening in the USA. And so but they kind of know there is a feeling, it's often commented on. There is a feeling in Russia that they should, teach them a lesson, and they shouldn't allow the West to save face. And the counter argument is that you have to let the West save face because there's people in Washington, D.C., at least, who are crazy enough that they would launch the nuclear weapons if it was obvious that they were losing a war, because they can't do that politically.
Possibility. Mark Breckle.
Well, again, there's a place called the Chonhar Kersno Blast. Now, in 2014, the Ukrainians were actually digging in there because obviously the Crimea had gone to Russia. and Russia would have easily gone straight through there. But
Yeah.
the most sad thing about it, the separatists, what you call the DPR, which is the Donetsk People's Republic, wanted to be Russian in the Donetsk and the Lugansk regions.
Yes.
But like I said to you before, Poroshenko absolutely hated the Russians. They said they were separatists. So this time, when
Yes.
like Warren's always said about the atom blast, which is Nova Russia, Putin will not be fooled the third time now.
9.
Oh, go on then. We'll go 9 then. It's still
9.
Nova Russia.
He's going to have those 8, and he's getting Crimea 7 oblasts on the mainland, and then Odessa and Crimea. Yeah. Let's have a little look at this. I've never changed my mind on that, and I'm not going to until they prove me wrong. Let's have a little look at this then, because this was Sky's nonsense. Now, I'm really, really sorry to put you through 3 minutes of this, but if I had to sit through it, so are you. So be warned. Listen to this.
Its 4th year, why has Russia chosen this opportunity to do another military exercise in Belarus? Back in December last year, President Putin and Alexander Lukashenko did a deal, signed a treaty which provided some nuclear protection for Belarus in the event that they were invaded. This exercise, Zapad 25, is all about providing some credibility around that treaty. So Zapad 25 has involved a lot of exercising troops on the ground, but also testing and demonstrating weapons. Now, there's been a wide variety of normal weapons, guns, bullets, tanks and the like. But the really interesting one is the Zircon hypersonic missile that's been fired. It was fired from the sea into a maritime target. Many in the West saw that as a demonstration of the West of Russia's continued capability. But bluntly, Russia doesn't have that many of those missiles. It'll be wanting to use them in the war in Ukraine. So this was simply a way of demonstrating to the West that it isn't just focused on Ukraine. It has the capacity to also deter NATO. The key issue for NATO is that whilst these joint military exercises may be happening on Belarusian territory, the memory is very short that back in February 22, Russia launched some of its invasion of Ukraine from Belarusian territory. It's quite close to Kyiv at the northern border. Therefore, any exercises could portend a major military offensive. NATO, as a result, is conducting a whole series of other military exercises of its own to protect its borders. For example, Poland is looking at Iron Defender, a major exercise with 30,000 military forces involved, including some from America and Canada. In Lithuania, Thunder Strike is a big exercise involving 17,000 troops. In Latvia, 12,000 troops. And there's also exercise in Germany and a US-led Iron Fist. So the core question here is, why has Russia done this now? Russian military objectives seem to be twofold, one of which is by doing exercise to the north, it distracts Ukraine, because Ukraine just can't be sure that there won't be another attack from Belarusian territory. The other reason for doing these exercises is a clear message to NATO. Mess with us, we still have capacity to cause you a bloody nose should you get involved at all in the conflict. However, following the drone attacks both on Poland and in Romania, we've seen a massive step back from Russia as they're trying to descale the limit of this escalation. The real issue for me, though, is ultimately, is the West simply going to bolster its defences and wait for Russia to strike again? Or is it going to step up to ensure the safety and security of NATO airspace, actually start extend its coverage over parts of Ukraine? We've long been talking about a no-fly zone. I think we're getting closer and closer to the day where NATO will feel that's the only way to guarantee its security.
So my thoughts are, James, that you're saying that it can't make it work. I absolutely agree with you, but they can't make it work without the Americans. And they were very, very upset when the Americans were not buying this whatsoever. In fact, they didn't bother speaking, did they, to Tusk? They went straight to Nowicki to get the real lowdown on what was going on. Your thoughts, James?
Okay, I mean, firstly, that report is an example of how a serious news channel there is talking nonsense. He says he asserts that Russia doesn't have many Zircon missiles left or something, which is what they've been saying since the start of the war, and it's not true.
Yes. They've got tons of them.
You know, how does he know? He doesn't know. That's
No, he
just an assertion that's made, a propaganda assertion. And he should say, we don't know how many they've got, you know.
Like getting there in 4 days.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, basically, he also explains how that there's going to be military exercises with 30,000 troops in Poland. You know how big the Belarusian army is? Belarus is not a very populous country, you know.
No, it's not.
Their whole armed forces, you know, including the air force and everything, is 63,000 men. It's much smaller than the British armed forces.
Yeah.
And they're going to put 30,000, like, you know, army troops or whatever in Poland, and then probably the same guys, 17,000 of them in Lithuania. You see, so this is obviously a threat. The Russians, and especially the Belarusians, can take that as a threat to them.
Yes.
So this is, you know, they, from their point of view, you know, and this is not just kind of a propaganda claim, they feel, you know, they feel under threat from NATO. NATO is trying to, you know, the last defense secretary of the US said that NATO, the US aim in the Ukraine war was to weaken Russia, you know, militarily by you know, killing its troops and destroying its equipment or something, right? Okay. They're all saying that. They're all saying they want to destroy the Russian army in Ukraine. They've lured Ukraine. They're boasting about this. They've lured Ukraine into a quagmire in Ukraine. Now, possibly the opposite is true, because they've sent a lot of their equipment, they've given it for free to the Ukrainian army, and it's all been blown up, really, you know, like 2/3 of it is gone. Never to be seen.
It's just for a revamp then.
Yeah. So they've done so much damage to their economies, you know, just like they said they were going to damage the Russian economy. So they have paid the price for fighting the war. You know, the Russian army, the Russian armed forces are, in fact, bigger now than they were at the start of the war, and they may remain at that size after the war, and so forth. All this sort of stuff. You see, so, but the reporter from Sky, and he says, in my view, there should be a no-fly zone. And I don't care about your view. You're just the reporter. Don't editorialize this nonsense. Right. Yeah. And then again, the no-fly zone is going to be security for how's that going to be security for Europe? If you want security for Europe, then keep your air force in your own country, flying over your territory to defend it.
Certainly help.
Don't send it into another country where there's a chance that you'll get shot down. Absolutely. And then what are you going to do? Are you going to claim that that was an act of war?
And by the way, just when they're talking about drones into Poland, if you want to see what a Grand drone can do, that was in Kharkiv, by the way. And there's something else that happened today. Now, do turn away if you don't want to watch this, because this is a bit gruesome. This is an ambush behind enemy lines carried out by the Russians on a bunch of NATO chaps. Let's have a look. Now, this is a bunch of chaps here who are sponsored by NAFO. You know, the people who go around doing all the fundraising, left, right, and centre, and they are from Estonia. Let's have a little look here. There you can see the pictures. The NAFO, just in case anybody don't know, are the North Atlantic Fellow Organisation, who are good friends with Kaya Kallis. And of course, there are countrymen there. Might be a good idea to keep them home, Kaya, instead of telling them to go into Russia and get killed. It is this, the mercenaries, I wanted to pick up on this, because the mercs that are going in there are dying in even greater numbers, James Tweedy.
Okay, I mean, I think that sticker on the door of the car, of the pickup truck, was saying that the NAFO people had paid for it, because they don't come out of there, you know, they're keyboard warriors. They're not out there fighting.
Yes.
And it might have been donated, you know, from people. The money might have been raised in one of the Baltic states and then sent there. I don't know. I think it's tenuous to say that they were. What do you say? They were Lithuanians or Latvians in that
Estonian.
truck. Yeah, they probably. It's more like they bought one and gave it to them. But there is a report of another incident where quite a lot of the mercenaries,
Yes,
foreign volunteers, whatever you want to call them, Foreign Legion, were sent in on the front line, which they possibly haven't been doing very much before, and then suffered a lot of casualties, according to the report. And you know, because, and what does that mean? It means that there's a shortage of other troops, of Ukrainian troops, to go and fight right up on the front line where you get shelled or you get hit by drones. So suddenly they're you know, they're doing stuff that they didn't sign up for, or they're not being paid for, let's say, or even though they're getting paid more than the Ukrainian troops, and yeah, they've got, you know,
okay,
they're finding out what war is really like.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. A couple of things to get into with this then, because once again, we knew that as soon as she got her feet under the table, Baerbock would get absolutely stupid, and she has. Of course, her first day in the UN, she's banging on about Russia. I mean, this woman can't help herself, can she, James?
Well, she's chair of the UN General Assembly.
Yes.
And I mean, the purpose of the UN, which was founded by the Soviet Union, you know, now Russia,
yes,
and, you know, the other victorious countries in the Second World War, you know, that's where the United Nations comes from. It comes from the Allies, is to prevent war between states, right? And certainly the General Assembly does not have the power to authorize war. Only the Security Council can do that. She's not the chair of the Security Council.
this is true.
Right? So her job is to moderate media, you know, the debates between the countries, the actual delegates of the countries, including her country. She is not the delegate from Germany, right? When they are talking about things, not to set the agenda, not to you know, not
Annalena Baerbock, moderate. Okay.
Yeah, well, and not to propose. She knows how to do it. It's not that difficult to do. But she's probably chaired meetings before. But she's trying to she's trying to introduce her own agenda there, and that's not an agenda of peace, which is what the UN should be about.
Yeah, exactly that. I just wanted to highlight that it didn't take her more than a day to get her legs under the table, and then of course that. Just quickly go through a couple of things because I want to get through something in the first hour. The Russians are in the sports centre in the middle of Kupiansk. James, what's your reading of the situation with Kupiansk? This is going to be a bit of a blow, isn't it? I mean, they're going to be. I mean, there's a lot to go before you clear Kupiansk out. But it's another, should we say, nail in the coffin of the PR?
Kupiansk is on the eastern bank of the Oskil River.
Yes.
And you can see on that map you just showed there's a bridge crossing the river that goes through the center of Kupiansk, on a road that goes through Kupiansk, right?
Yep.
And then on the other side, if you scroll down a bit to the bottom left, and then on the other side is that green area, which is telling you it's still held by, occupied by Ukrainian troops.
Yes.
I don't know how many, but if those bridges, there's a couple of bridges there, but if they're both cut off, then they're stuck.
They are.
I mean, they can try and
They're
get
not
across
going anywhere.
on a boat or something, or swim, but they've got a problem, you know.
Yes.
And I don't know why they're still trying to hold that ground and haven't retreated back to the river, which you can obviously defend a lot easier. They're
going to get massacred in there, aren't they?
There may not be all that many of them. They may all decide to surrender, but in practice, they often you get a lot of casualties in those situations. But they may make a very rapid withdrawal across the bridge there. But it's already time to be doing that,
Yeah, absolutely. Mark Breckle.
Again, then they'll be heading to a place called Yampil, and that's very close to Slaviansk. And if anybody looks at Slaviansk, it has that horrible rags flying in either side of the city called Ukrainian flags. And once they've gone, that'll be the traditional. Slaviansk was taken by the DPR back in 2014, 2015.
Yes.
That's the prize. But yeah, they will get slaughtered, Warren, because they're running out. They're running out of troops.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for that. We've got about 6 or 7 minutes before you guys have to leave us. I'm going to have a quick thing here because there are a couple of things I want to get through. Very quickly, James Tweedy. The nonsense with the Nord Stream. Italy are handing back one of the magnificent 7 who blew up Nord Stream. Do you buy the Andromeda story, given that the decompression chamber would have to be at the size of the yacht for them to actually have carried it out? Are you having 7 Ukrainians on the pleasure boat Andromeda?
Yeah, I mean, that's even then. Does it have that many bunks? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A few years ago, I kind of got interested in this. It's not that expensive to buy, like I say, a 30, 40 foot boat.
No.
But then you've got to pay for the upkeep on it, right?
Yes.
But they're not big inside, I know people who live on canal boats and things, and again, they're not big inside. You don't have a lot of bunks. And yeah, if they put in, how would you even install one of those chambers in a boat like that of that size without completely rebuilding it? You'd have to pull up the whole, the cabin and the deck, and put it in, and then build it all back on top.
Let's have a quick look. Yes, yeah, it would have to be. Let's have a quick word with Louis Bastos, because he was a diver. Louis Bastos. I mean, this is not an easy thing to do at the depths they were going down, is it?
Good morning, good evening. No,
hello.
It is never on a yacht. I was a yachtsman. I've done yacht master for 30 years, and I've done diving for many years. You need to have at least as we used to call them, PT boat size of a ship to have that decompressor on. It will never fit on a yacht. And by the way, James, if you're going to buy a yacht, call me. I'll examine the boat before. I'll examine the boat before you buy it, because a lot of people buy boats without examining the essential stuff on a boat. Many people fall because they buy, you're beautiful on top, but underneath you're growing bobs. If you want, James, contact me. I will help you use the boat. All right. Yeah. There's no way the decompressor could be on that yacht. Never.
Thank you very much indeed. one of those. There is a couple of things I want to get into before we leave you for the first hour. There is these are a change of story now. We've been on Ukraine for a little while, so let's get into this thing with Ricky Hatton here. Clever stick.
No wonder Ricky Hatton deliberately broke up with his girlfriend before he passed away. He made 3 key moves to protect his fortune. Ricky left behind a $40 million estate, but the women who had his children wouldn't see a penny of it, and that was by design. First, Ricky hadn't dated anyone for a full year. Since nobody would agree to his marriage terms, he set up a strict prenup to make sure every dollar stayed his. Even his girlfriend from last year, Claire Sweeney, broke things off by year's end when she realized he wasn't serious. Second, Ricky created trust funds for his kids. While he didn't take his ex-girlfriend seriously, Ricky adored the children he had with his ex-fiancée Jennifer Dooley. The end of their 11-year relationship left him depressed for a long time. Once he got back on track, he immediately planned a safety net for his kids, not wanting a breakup to derail their upbringing. Most importantly, he didn't leave a will, meaning all his assets would go to his 3 children and his parents, but since he wasn't close to his parents, they wouldn't actually control the money. In the end, the $40 million would be handled by Ricky's trusted long-term law firm and delivered to his kids exactly the outcome he wanted.
Quite smart, Ricky Hatton, wasn't it?
$40 million. A machine is reading that, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't believe any of that. Those fake videos. I don't buy into that. But how did he die? Did he did he have a heart attack, or did he? Some people think he killed himself. Right.
At the moment, I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you, James.
Right. Nobody knows. Yeah. They're not going to tell you. Or maybe not going to tell you for a long time.
He was only 46. We know that.
Yeah, so he probably wasn't. I mean, was he planning to kill himself? Was he?
Well, he'd had.
Did he know that he was unwell and was going to die? I don't think he was counting on dropping dead. Younger than me.
Yeah.
Exactly. But
Very
I mean,
briefly.
you can't take it with you. But just write a will. It's smart to write a will and leave it to your kids. Don't. Don't leave it to your spouse. Will be okay.
Okay.
Your kids can look after your spouse, but if you leave it to your spouse, they might remarry, and then that person, if your spouse doesn't write a will after they remarry, then if they die before their new husband or wife, that person will get it automatically. Not your kid.
Okay, Mark Breckle.
Again, Claire Sweeney was getting up to at least 40 million herself, so she wasn't skinned either. So they were quite equally matched in money anyway. So
okay, thank you very much, Mark Chamberlain.
He used to drink in Salford, where I used to booze years ago, but I didn't think he was worth 40 million. I mean, he went through a spell. He went through a spell where he didn't have a lot, to be honest. Going back quite a few years.
So maybe it's not true. Yes.
I don't think he's worth 40 million. I don't think he's worth 40 million.
Thank you very much for that. Now, of course, we lost Ricky Hatton. And we generally, I don't know whether you've ever noticed this, but when we start to lose famous people, we usually lose them in threes. Now, I'm just saying that we lose them in threes. One of the people who passed today was Robert Redford. And many people talk about Hollywood superstars and everything else. When you do talk about Hollywood greats, he was one of the proper Hollywood greats. And here's a little mash-up for you of exactly how good he was.
I didn't know you were the Sundance Kid when I said you were cheating. If I draw on you, you'll kill me. There's that possibility.
No, you'd be killing yourself. So why don't you just invite us to stick around? You can do it. I mean, easy. Come on. Come on.
Why'd you stick around?
Thanks, but we gotta get going.
Hey, kid. Hey, kid. How good are you?
Come on in.
We can't come inside.
Woodward says there's electronic surveillance.
Surveillance, who's doing it?
It's being done. People's lives are in danger.
Wait a minute.
Maybe even ours.
What happened to that justice source of yours?
Well, I guess I made the instructions too complicated because he thought I said hang out when I just said hang on.
Oh, Jesus.
The story is right. Haldeman was the fifth name to control that fund, and Sloan would have told the grand jury. Sloan wanted to tell the grand jury.
Why didn't he?
Because nobody asked. Nobody asked him. The cover-up had little to do with the break-in. It was to protect covert operations. The covert activities involving the entire U.S. intelligence community.
Did Deep Throat say that people's lives are in danger?
Yes.
What else did he say?
He said everyone is involved.
It would happen this way. You may be walking. Maybe the first sunny day of the spring. And a car will slow beside you. And a door will open. And someone you know, maybe even trust, will get out of the car. And he will smile. A becoming smile. But he will leave open the door of the car and offer to give you a lift.
Well, rest in peace, Robert Redford. And if you did want to see any of those films, by the way, there were Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, obviously. And then, of course, we had All the President's Men. Then 3 Days of the Condor and Jeremiah Johnson. I would recommend all 4 films. Mark Breckle and then James Tweedy. Mark.
Oh, Bridge Too Far. I could watch that 100 times over. And do you remember The Great Waldo Pepper? I watched that as well as a kid. I love that film. But he's done so many films. It's fantastic, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. James Tweedy, proper superstar, wasn't he? I mean, we hear Hollywood greats. He was actually one of them.
Yeah, you know, he was a real sort of like heartthrob actor of the 60s and 70s.
He was.
And they, you know, but yeah, like a real star. And they put him in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid with, you know, with Paul Newman.
Yes.
Who was a lot more established actor, and
he was,
you know, a great actor in his own right, and he, you know, he did hold his own in that, and they made a great pair, you know. So, you know, he did, yeah, like the younger guy come in, but it was still great, you know, and could stand up and act alongside.
You know when somebody's a good actor and they're good films because everybody starts quoting the movie lines in the comments. Thank you very much for all the people who have watched the first hour. If you like what we do, come across to warrenthornton.com. Come and join us. Come and have your say, and come and have a debate. You don't have to agree with everything that we say. You're allowed to have your say. That's what free speech is all about, and that's what we practice. Thank you for watching.